So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and the very first thing will be the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any corrections or omissions?
I just know you wanted to change bike trail to Greenway.
Yeah, that's official. The Greenway is kind of the official name of it, so.
Very bottom line, okay.
Okay. Other than that, do I hear a motion to accept them?
I'll move.
Second,
Did I hear a second?
Koza, second.
All right, all those in favor, you've got to say your name and your vote. So go ahead. I'm not gonna- Hmm?
That's an I from Sierra.
Koza, bye.
Okay,
Kwasinski, aye.
okay,
Palmer abstain. I wasn't here.
okay.
Brown, yes.
I was not there either, so I should probably abstain.
Okay. Well, I can always vote, so that aye, a hard aye. Any nays? Okay, moving on quickly because we have a lot of stuff tonight. I think that before we go on at all and start discussing anything, except maybe one thing, let's take care of that first. Bob, what is the official place we should be sending the check for the canal? Because I have to make out a warrant article.
Yeah, the project manager and / administrator is Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
Yes.
They are the administrator for the 6 communities involved in the project. So that they will be paid directly from each of the 6 towns. Correct.
Yes. And I should have it marked Canal Project.
New Haven, Northampton Canal Project.
Oh, I want to get that right because I'm getting ready to write that. Okay. Next thing. If you've got a pen or pencil and some paper, I'd like you to write these figures down so you'll know what is the best that we might know right now about what's in the 4 lines that determine our spending.
I have a copy of it, Virginia.
Okay?
Yeah, I have the same one you have.
Okay, excellent. But the rest of the people? Okay, I'm going to read them, if you can jot it down. Undesignated, $810,635.72. Okay, open space, recreation / $72,625.50. Historical preservation, $104,667.77. And community housing is $381,254.71. And I've got.
May I interject there that what you're reading, for the rest of you, what you're reading is the beginning fiscal 21 balance. That is the beginning balance as of July 1st, 21.
That's what they gave me. So.
I'm reading it right from the sheet, Virginia, same one you have.
Yeah, yes, that's the beginning balances. I don't know that anything has been paid out of it. The only possibility might be something in historical.
You mean
No,
fiscal
no,
year
but the
22?
reason why I say that is that there are commitments
Oh,
that
yeah,
have been incurred since July 1st against that.
it haven't been paid.
Correct.
Um,
So go ahead.
We know that the house, the historical house, but you can begin to use this as a guide. Now, the other thing I want to say is that when we say undesignated, that only means we can use them in one of the three areas. We can't go out and do something else with that money. So it is only for the three areas that we can have projects in. I think a lot of times we've kind of shied off from using the undesignated, but we might want to think differently tonight.
Virginia, may I help you a little bit there? So that was the starting figure. Now, if you look at your sheet, Virginia, and look at bottom line, because there are commitments that have been incurred against that. So versus the figures that Virginia just gave you, if you take away commitments and add in anticipated revenues.
I don't think we can do that.
I'm sorry?
I don't want to do that, the anticipated. We'll know.
Well, there's nothing anticipated here because it's not coming from the state. What Ed gave me today is showing hard figures, not
Okay.
magic figures.
Okay.
So if we go to the bottom line of what is available in those categories that you just said, and I'll read versus each one. The undesignated was 810 some odd thousand, now becomes 694. The CPA open space, which was 72 some odd thousand, now becomes 52,000. Historical, which was 104, now becomes 99,000. And public housing, which was 381, now becomes, because there's additions going in there from the town, the 3% tax, 447,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've totaled up what the projects that we're going to be talking about tonight. And we have, it would totally amount to $356,500. And there is one that we can talk about, but Cindy is not actually able to give us the figures for tonight. So with that in mind, we know that there's going to be a town meeting sometime coming up, probably in November. And we will have the one for the canal, and we might have some other ones here too. So Sierra, I would like you to, if you want to, give us a brief little discussion of how the housing meeting went and what your future plans are.
Okay, so a lot of you were there, so thank you for coming. There was a lot of great consensus around the community. A lot of people care a lot about, housing, expanding our affordable housing. So we're still in the process of the housing production plan. We're going to have another community meeting in November that hopefully we'll have even more people at. So we're working towards the plan, and then ultimately we're going to start, taking next steps and using some of our strategies, like, creating a housing trust, perhaps working on overlay districts, updating our inclusionary zoning bylaw, perhaps. So we're hoping for some movement in that direction. I don't foresee us being able to spend a lot of the housing funds this fiscal year, just because we're still in so much of a planning stage. But I wouldn't rule it out completely.
Okay, any questions from the rest of you for Sierra? Well, thank you. I found it a very interesting evening for two reasons. I was interested to hear what is coming from people about housing, but I was also amazed with the technology.
Yeah, the Post-its were very exciting.
That was very interesting to see what you could even do with it. Okay, the first new project, I don't know if there's any other old business that we should look at, but the first of the new items that are coming before us is, okay, let me get the right place here. Yeah, from the Parks Commission. And I hope that most of you were able to get the materials I sent. I'm sorry if you couldn't open them. I have trouble doing some things too, and I'm not that adept with my computer, but Dan is here someplace.
Hello.
Hello. Do you want to explain what this project is about?
Yeah, absolutely. Daniel LaValle, 17 Glendale Road. If you would allow me to, I would like to share my screen because I can show the information as I talk to it.
Okay, excellent.
So I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if it appears for you all.
It does.
Excellent. Okay, so first I thought, this is obviously my first presentation to you, so if I go into too much detail or you want me to head off in a different direction, just let me know. So I figured let's review the application. So the application is for the matching of the park grant from the state, PARC. So the Parks Commission had worked with the Ad hoc Grant Committee to apply for a grant from the state for improvements to Conan Park. The improvements to Conan Park that we had discussed with the state were adding a accessible walking path from College Highway along the tree line, and I'll show you a map in a second, to basically the parking lot which is closest to the library. The second part of the application, which was basically suggested from two places. One, from the park grant advisors themselves, is they're interested in climate resiliency and adapting to climate change. And so their recommendation was applying for grant money for what's called a splash pad. A splash pad is basically a cooling area. So this would be an area for townspeople to cool off on those hot summer days. It's, obviously we can't provide swimming as we may have in the past because of the amount of insurance that it would incur. But towns have been around. You may have seen splash pads. They've been adapted. So we proposed a modest sized 20 by 20 splash pad, and we had found some similar quotes for that. So that's really to break what we're requesting down for you to match for the Parks grant is for those two items. So let me show you. First, let's start with the map. So let me orient you. Here we have Conan Park. You see the baseball fields, and you see Clark Street. We see East Street over here, and we see the library. And then as you pull in, you may be used to pulling in from the library, and you pull in and you park, and here's the pavilion, right? Would you guys want me to make it a little bigger?
It's good.
Okay.
It's good.
Okay. So initially, this all started with the concept of this pre-existing playground. The park grant does not apply to fixing playground equipment. So I'm going to say there will be there may be future requests to fix up this I'll call it dilapidated playground. But what this park grant will cover is any improvements for accessibility. Accessibility means like access for handicapped people, accessibility to different areas. So we really wanted to break that down into a couple different phases. We looked at Route 10, and this green line along Route 10 is where sidewalks exist. So you start at the corner of College Highway and Clark Street, and there's a sidewalk that goes down, and it runs all the way, and at least on this map, gets you up to the corner of East Street and to the Town Hall. So the part we would have asked the park grant for funding for is this phase 1 of the pathway for this park grant. So it takes you from College Highway. There already is a paved entryway there, and so we're talking about crushed stone, compacted crushed stone walkway that would go along the tree line down to this parking lot. We feel this is beneficial because we have did some surveys and talked to townspeople, and there are some walking groups that walk along Clark Street. Right now they walk along Route 10. I think they circle around East Street. So this would give them some other options for walking. Also gives the townspeople easier accessibility from Route 10 directly into Conan Park. So that's part 1, we'll call it, of what we're asking for funding.
Can I just say, is that little triangle by the Conan Park sign, the pathway phase 1, is that the new pickleball court? The new little triangle there?
This little triangle my mouse is over?
No, a little bit farther up. This is with pathway phase 1.
Yes.
Is that right there. Is that the new pickleball?
That's the basketball court.
And where's pickleball? To the left, right of that?
Is right here. So what we're talking about for these. So the nice thing about the walkway is it will connect into, give accessibility into the tennis courts, into the basketball courts, and lead into the new pickleball courts, as well as the splash pad.
There's
and
the playground there for the kiddos.
Absolutely, and the playground. So this walkway really connects all these, I'll call them activities that people could do.
Very good.
Yep. So that's the thought behind that, is it allows people to more options for walking. When we had done this survey, I would say it was interesting the results we got from surveying townspeople as well as surrounding communities. I would say looking at different age groups, more senior age groups were interested in accessible walking paths. So while we do have trails like some of our conservation land in town, which are walking paths, they're not even surfaces that are easily walkable by, I'd say, all levels of mobility. So this would be a walking area that those other levels of mobility could use for recreation and also physical activity. So that's really the talking about the walking path. And the other part is the splash pad. And again, getting back to that survey we had done, I believe it was the open space and recreation plan, and I'm sure Cindy can correct me if I'm quoting the wrong plan. But the number one reason people leave Easthampton for other activities is for splash pads. So that led us to think, well, are splash pads something that people would be interested in? So we conducted a survey, and it turns out, based on age groups, particularly, we saw that what's the right word? People of voting age who have children were interested in splash pads. Probably not too surprising, right? So let's look at the options for a splash pad. So this is kind of the idea of the splash pad we're proposing. It's not very large. We're not talking about one that's like you'd see at like the one at Look Park. It's more along the size of the one that's like in Easthampton. And the cost for this one was in the $40K range. But it offers what the townspeople need, a cooling space. When we have these hotter summer days, as climate change continues to advance, this will be an opportunity for people to cool off, for those who may not have air conditioning or other means of cooling. So that's really the state's driving force behind asking for such a feature in town and allowing funding. So yeah, this one was called Charlotte's Web. Kind of interested.
That's cute.
We had gotten three.
Dan, can I jump in for a minute?
Of course.
What happens if we're in a drought? We're not supposed to water.
I have a pre-existing.
Frogs, Randall.
Oh.
We can't hear you, Randall.
Oh, well, I stopped. I heard somebody else talking. So I basically, I know budgets shrink every year and we don't seem to be able to fund the existing stuff we have. So I would like the committee to think about that when we're thinking about pushing projects forward. For this project, is there any sense of what the ongoing maintenance will be, like an annual cost? And a lot of times I don't think what's thought of is what is it going to cost and how does it affect operations going forward? For example, a stone path sounds like a great idea, but like what are the plans of keeping it weed free? Will the crushed stone be segregated from the areas we mow so that we're not dulling blades on, the rock that gets kicked into the grass? These are the things I want people to think about. Do you need weed killer on it to keep the weeds down? As far as the splash pad goes, did anybody approach the water department to see about whether there's even the possibility of getting water out there? Will it operate during voluntary water district restrictions? Where will it drain to? Who cleans it? Does it require chlorination, testing, winterization, record keeping? And who's going to be responsible for all this? There is a Massachusetts Regulations 105, Section 435 about pools, and I don't know if that's applicable here, but you have to chlorinate. It's just, I don't know if this has all been looked into, and it would all be more cost. I have some similar things about the Greenway, ongoing costs for maintenance, but I'm going to have to sign off because I have an appointment in 1 minute.
Randall, if I may break in there.
I don't know if we're deciding on all these things tonight, but I just have a lot of questions.
Yep.
So I can forward the questions in an email. I actually thought the meeting was in person tonight, and then when I showed up at town hall, nobody was there. So I figured out it was Zoom. So I am signing off, and I will send my questions along. I don't know if you guys are deciding or not, but I bid you good night.
All right, Virginia, I have some more basic questions than Randall had there. And those are all very good questions, and I don't know whether they can be addressed tonight or not. Some of the basic questions I have, I believe there are some errors here. First of all, there is no sidewalk along Route 10 that leads to the Phase 1 path that you're talking about. There is nothing in front of the, there is no sidewalk in front of the old schoolhouse and along there, and I don't know how far up that lack of sidewalk goes. The second thing that I would bring up here is that I am, because I wear so many hats, I am somewhat concerned about the constriction of open space next to that Lions pavilion, which at various times during the year, becoming more and more frequent, quite frankly, houses from 200 to 300 people for concerts for Lions barbecues, for Celebrate Southampton, and I am somewhat concerned about the constriction of that open space there next to that pavilion. The third thing that I would ask here, and I'm not sure this can be answered here tonight. In the old days, I remember that there was money left by the Conan family for Conan Park. In spite of the fact that I've tried to discover where that money is or what it's being used for, I can't find it. So that would be a third question that I would have with regard to further expenditures with regard to Conan Park.
Thank you, Bob. No, I don't think we're that we have to have answers tonight. With this discussion, this gives the Park Commission the opportunity to go back, check some of these things, and then come back to another meeting with some of the answers anyway, for a real discussion. I just don't see it that we could answer them and that we should make a decision tonight, because I don't think that's proper. So that will give the Park Commission can try to get some more answers or some of these things. Does that work for you, Dan?
I think that all those things are reasonable, great questions, and questions that, either we would be asked here and or at town meeting if it happened to go that far. So I'd say part of the yes. So I think I appreciate your approach of allowing us to collect your questions and go back, do some research, and then we meet again. I think that's really, we appreciate that. I can talk a little bit about some of the things. I know that the way the grant is written is it's divided into 2 years. So the first year is really your planning phase. So any of those details that aren't worked out, let me see if I think I have it up here. Design finalization, so is in 22. So open questions like along those lines, the things that we need to figure out that aren't already answered, we have the time of that year and some budget to answer those questions. There is water at Conan Park at the pavilion, like we all know. So the assumption, and electricity. So the assumption would be that we'd be tapping off of the water and the power from the pavilion for the splash pad. So I do know those answers. Yep, I think the operation and maintenance plan is something Randall really hit on and is going to be an important deciding factor in this. So I think putting that together and explaining it to people is important.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Dan. I'm sorry. Did you have a question yourself, Virginia?
No.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I had a question about that crushed stone.
Yep.
Obviously, it's permeable. That's better for the environment. But
Yep.
my concern is with crushed stone and the maintenance on top of, the weeds, as Randall had suggested. What is the inclement weather variable here? Is it easy to clear from snow? Are people going to be safe walking on that? Is there going to be ice in pockets of crushed stone versus doing something, like Trex or another more solid, smooth type of board that could be more easily cleared?
So let me say this. The thought is it would be like the rest of Conan Park. We wouldn't be clearing this during the winter.
Okay.
So this would be seasonal use.
So it would need to be closed during the winter specifically.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And there's a gate there's actually a gate here. So
Okay, so it could be gated off, closed, and nobody's liable for slips, trips, and falls. Okay, and then my other concern is I don't know anything about splash pads. I didn't even read the article, but I was scrolling through the headlines the other day and saw the brain eating amoeba at a splash pad.
So there is chlorination in the tanks. That chlorination is part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think even on an environmental level, recycling that water and chlorinating it and running through a filter versus just plowing through gallons upon gallons of water is a much more sustainable decision.
Right. So you have the minimal water costs of whatever evaporates, and then you have we have the fixed electrical costs, so that's good. So yeah, I agree with you.
I have questions.
Okay.
All right, Cindy Palmer. So I heard what Bob Kozub said about how it's getting kind of congested right there in that area. And I know it's brand new, but the pickleball courts have gone in, and I think they've even been surfaced already. And they're between where this proposed splash pad is and the basketball court. I've walked in the back end of this, going back towards Route 10, and I wonder, while we see trees in the picture, I wonder if it's reasonable to consider moving this splash pad on the other end, more, closer to the Route 10 end. That's just a question. And as far as the water, I am in favor of a splash pad, not just for little kids to play on, but for the cooling aspect of it, because we do know that our summers are going to get hotter and longer. But I think we need to really think this through. I brought my grandchildren to the one up at Look Park, and it's really, really fun, but it's kids. It's definitely kids. And if we're going to use this as a cooling station, I think we need to think this through. There need to be benches. And there is a maintenance aspect. Somebody will leave by mistake, they'll leave their shoes or their towel or their something. There was liability. Water, you run, you slip, you can hurt yourself. And I don't know what the surface is going to look like of the splash pad per se. Just these are all things that I think need to be considered. And also, what we do know is there are going to be more mosquitoes as we go forward, and water draws mosquitoes. I don't know does chlorine discourage mosquitoes? But I just don't know the answer to that. It seems I'm a magnet for mosquitoes, so I know that because I'm so sweet, of course. But those are just my thoughts. As far as what Bob brought up about the sidewalk, I believe the sidewalk is on the opposite side, and then we
does continue there. I live right there.
At that point, yeah.
You live there? No,
right on the bottom left, right out of the picture.
Oh,
right
okay.
But yeah, I've walked down that whole way down to Ms. Kate Swistack's house before, and there is a sidewalk the whole way. It just crosses the road right there.
It's on the Clark Chapman side of the highway. Then you're saying,
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So we need a crosswalk to access that.
Yeah.
That should be a question of. That's a state highway too. So that, I think, is another question to be considered. I am in favor of this. I think it's a great idea.
Expense.
It's another expense. Now, I'm going to throw in something that's related but hasn't been brought up. But I do know that Dan knows about this and Rini knows about this, that the owners of the property, sort of on the upside of this orange line, maybe you can do your little scroll thing over there, that big open space right there. They have contacted me as the open space chairperson and others in town to offer for the town to buy this property. The last I heard, it's very cost prohibitive, and of course that we in the town can't pay any more than an appraised value. But I think this is a time to bring this up, because as we think about the best use of Conan Park, which is such a valuable thing to have in our town, in my opinion. So close to the town center, so close to the library, well used more and more all the time. I just wonder am I confounding the whole picture by raising that question now, or should I just raise it as a point that the people that own that property, they were given us until December to tell them whether or not the town is interested in that. And of course, I don't know if we are, because
And it has been for sale, right, Cindy?
it's got a for sale sign. They apparently have, and this is all, they've talked to me, and so I'm okay talking about this in a public meeting.
Okay.
They apparently have 2 interested parties for the property that's got the frontage on East Street, but the parties are not interested, or at least one is definitely not interested in the back lot. Now, we also know there may be wetlands involved. And so I'm not sure it's a deal for us at all in our town. I'm just not sure if they seem to want a great deal of money for it. But given that all these factors are coming up, I just wonder, we have to decide, Dan, and I raised that question with you the other day, was this talked about in the Park Commission in terms of any aspect of the acquisition of that? So, okay.
Right. So I guess
Is Ed talking?
no, I was talking.
But Ed is talking. We can't hear you, Ed. He's not muted, but we can't hear him.
I don't even see that Ed is on, do you?
I see Ed's face. Yeah, his mouth is moving. I don't know what's going on.
I don't see him at all.
Oh, he's there, yeah.
He's here.
Ed, you hearing us?
You can hear us. We cannot hear you.
No.
Can you unmute him, Virginia, as the host?
I don't think so.
He's not muted. He doesn't
Yeah,
have the
he's
little
not
mute
muted.
icon.
But it does say privately after his name. I don't know what that's about.
I don't see anything on my, well, let me check. Okay, here we go.
He just left.
Oh,
He just signed out. So,
So can I just say something? This is a little bit beside the point, but since Cindy brought up that land there, just so people are aware, there's 2 things I just want people to know. The first is that there's been some discussion about whether this and/or some additional land on Clark Street might be appropriate for a public safety complex. So there was a meeting that I've set up along with the Public Safety Committee to meet on the 25th of October to discuss. The committee hasn't met in a long time. Janet Brown's on the committee also. So we're meeting just to kind of get back together and discuss, the usual, pendulum swinging between renovate existing buildings and/or land for the public safety complex. And the other thing is I just came off a COA meeting and there was a resident in town by the name of Mr. Parsons who has donated, we don't know the figure yet, but a significant amount of money towards
Significant, yeah.
if we're able to come up with within 2 years, plans for a new senior center. So I'm not saying there's anything is happening. I just want the committee to be aware that these 2 things are out there right now, and a committee is being put together to discuss as soon as we know more about the donation of Mr. Parsons. And also there's a meeting on the 25th of, I think it's whatever that Monday is, of October, of the Public Safety Committee. And that was partly because this land was talked about a possible public safety, but I think there's some wetland considerations on both of those properties right around the park.
Yes, I can tell you the one on Clark Street. There's actually a natural heritage and endangered species issue over. If you're talking about something over here,
By Marmon Keystone, right, the L-shaped lot.
yeah,
Right.
yes, just letting you know that, but I'm sure you already do.
Yep. Can I ask a question, Dan? I'm assuming that this would not involve taking down any of the trees on that tree line, right?
No, those are beautiful
Okay.
trees. We wouldn't touch those
Right.
trees.
And the other thing is, does this park grant depend upon the splash pad being part of it in its proposed,
Yeah.
like where it is? You can't change either where it is or to do the walkway first. It's basically a package deal.
I think maybe I can get Caitlin to help me answer these questions because she is the
I'm here.
expert. Thank you.
So I can actually answer a few of the questions. I was kind of just sending Dan messages. So to answer the
I
question,
tried to read them and I was not doing so good.
So yes, we were basically encouraged to apply for both because if we only applied for, say, a walking path, we were awarded special points because we did apply for a project that affected climate resiliency by creating a cooling pad, cooling station. The second thing that I will bring up is the question about water chlorination and maintenance. There are two ways you can build a splash pad. One of them is with a water circulating tank, which actually requires a lot more excavation and is much more expensive to maintain, as well as Randall mentioned, winterize and care for year round. So the way to really minimize cost of maintenance and risk of damage to the equipment is actually to not use a circulating type splash pad, but instead to focus on using water conserving devices, because talking about the brain amoeba, you really want to make sure that you're minimizing the risk of water contamination for the children. So that would be the reason to take into consideration not using an underground water tank, because the reason that there was that issue was because there was poorly maintained water logs and inadequate water filtration and cleanliness. Now, of course, the concept of, really being concerned about water usage. So splash pads don't operate unless there's somebody using it. Usually there's an operating button. So you can really select devices based upon how much water you're using, which would be really clarified through the design phase. But you don't have to use splash pads that use a ton of water. In fact, there's a lot of information about water conserving devices with splash pads and using actual sprayers that use a smaller amount of water while kids are using the splash pad. And we wouldn't be using a huge number of sprayers either. And in fact, Melissa, the grant administrator, when we met with her about this, really stressed that it doesn't have to be overly large or elaborate for it still to function as a cooling station. So just some things to think about. And maintenance costs will be much lower if we are not using an underground water tank circulating type system. In terms of risk, the surfaces are usually rough surface or either painted with like a special slip resistant paint. And there also is no standing water with these type of systems. To answer Cindy Palmer's question about mosquitoes, that's one of the reasons that they're actually safer than pools or any other type of wading pool, because there is no standing water for kids to drown in. And that's why the state has advocated for the use of splash pads instead of swimming pools or other things that could have standing water. And therefore there's no risk of pooling water, which could create an improved habitat for mosquitoes. I think that answers some of the questions.
May I interject? Only because I want to be a pain in the neck here. But, we have a fountain right there on Route 10 in Conan Park that hasn't been used for a number of years. What about that location for a splash pad? I mean, don't answer the question now.
I think we actually could. When we met with Melissa, I also want to say that the pickleball courts are a very large surface area, and I think if during the design phase we determined that there was a more suitable area for the splash pad, that it wouldn't be a deal breaker. I mean, I think that's why they allocate it's like 8 months for the design phase to make sure that you're putting it in the appropriate place with the appropriate resources available, like water, electricity.
I think we've gotten a lot of questions out for the park commission to go back and work on, and then plan on coming to our next meeting. My feeling is it would be very rushed to try to get this one on to the agenda for November's town meeting. And we don't want to do that. My only question is there a given time that you have to have the matching funds?
We would have to have an answer by the town meeting in order to be able to apply for this grant, because one of the requirements is that it has to be on a town meeting agenda by the end of this year, so December 31st.
Okay.
And just so folks know that the primary reason for having the town meeting in December would be to do a couple of discussions about matches, because ordinarily we won't have free cash certified by then. So we're talking about having the possibility of this being a special town meeting in order to discuss, if it comes to this, this particular match. Like, this is the reason why the December date was provided, because otherwise we probably wouldn't have it until January or February.
Okay, I had not heard that would be December.
Mm-hmm.
That gives us November to get the answers and to be able to make a reasonable decision on this, I think. I just don't want to rush it.
Mm-hmm.
No. Can I make a couple suggestions for Dan and Caitlin?
Please.
So coming back, if you could try to provide like an estimated gallon per day usage for the recirculating and the non-recirculating, just an average. And then my other question would be regarding runoff and what a runoff plan would be. Is there, if it's going to go right into the ground, is there going to be more of a sand filtration or some sort of leaching field? Just because, I think there are wetlands in the property adjacent to the north, and, the kids cover themselves in sunscreen and all sorts of other stuff. You never know. So just to kind of minimize any sort of runoff, bug spray and whatnot. And then, I think that's it. I think we've asked all the other questions.
I'm trying to collect a list of questions so that when I come back next, I can answer as many as possible. So if you allow me a minute to just list off the ones I had gathered.
Yes.
I think Randall is really looking for like the operation and maintenance plan of both the walkway and a splash pad.
Dan, I might recommend that the Park Commission even meet with Randall. I mean, obviously he was and also the water commissioners. It just seems like you'd be saving a lot of, you get probably a lot of back and forth if you met with them.
Yeah, excellent suggestion. I'm just trying to write it all down.
And the other thing, Dan, is this whole meeting is being recorded, so you can go back and listen to the commentary.
That's a very good point. Thank you. Now, did we just decide that there is no sidewalk error? Or there is?
We're okay. It's on the opposite side of the street.
Yeah, but we do want to talk about how people would cross the road. That was one of the things. Yeah. The crosswalk.
Yep, and there will be additional considerations because that is a state road. So
and we haven't even talked about parking. I mean, presumably there will be children and parents walking there, but for the most part, what the facts are today. Most people don't walk anywhere; they drive. So where the heck would they park to come to use that phase one pathway to get in there? There is no parking anywhere there. The only parking would be at the schoolhouse.
Well, you could park
behind it and then walk up Route 10 and gain access that way. But, those are all things that need to be investigated in detail.
Okay, and you specifically asked a question about the money left by the Conants?
It's been something that has been in the back of my mind for years with regard to monies that we are spending on all of our parks. And I do believe that I am correct that there was money left for, and it may have some restrictions on it. I don't know. But no matter how much I try and dig into the finances of the town, I can't find that money.
Okay.
And
I'll try my
would
best.
like to know more about it and whether it is indeed capable of being used for these kinds of projects.
That
Hey, Bob,
Yeah.
There is a trust fund that the interest can be expended upon, but not the principal. I don't know if that is generated from that original Conan donation or for something else, but I can tell you that it is in the town reports.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. One question I don't have to answer.
And I'll be happy to dig into it for you.
Okay, I think it's time that we stand
Yes.
and moved on.
Thank you all very much for your time and patience with me. And I hope next time I come back with the answers to your questions. So thank you.
Virginia, I have to insert that I
Dan.
have to leave at about 15 minutes because I have a planning board meeting. I'm sorry. So just.
Okay, well, let's see what we can do. But first of all, the next meeting would be a regular scheduled meeting, and that should give them time, is November 3rd. So same time, same place, I guess. Okay.
And let me interject this for you. There are 2 dates being considered for the special town meeting, December 7th and 14th.
Okay,
If December 7th is chosen, the opening for warrant articles will close on November 4th.
we'll be ready.
If December 14th is chosen, then the opening for submission of warrant articles will close on November 10th.
Okay. We could move it up and have another meeting in October, but I think this will give Dan time. It'll give us time to think about this and go back over it and make a good decision, I think. So if we move on, the next thing is the Greenway. And Ed is here.
And that would be,
We'll let him.
that would be me.
Yes.
All right. Well, the Greenway has been discussed for a long since I got here. My understanding is it's, could be have been discussed for 10 years or more. But I will let you know that the town has received 2 $100,000 grants to go towards the acquisition of the right-of-way for the railroad property that would be used for the Greenway. And we do have a letter of agreement for Pioneer Valley Railroad. And we have already reached out to them once we got the grants, and they are going to honor the terms of that letter of agreement, even though it was signed back in, I think it was February of 2018. For a purchase price of $340,000. We have estimated that the legal costs to go along with this be approximately $30,000 for a total of $370,000. At the last town meeting, we had actually asked for a debt exclusion of $270,000 to complete the project. At the time we did that, we knew we were going to get one of the $100,000 grants. So since that time period, the legislature and the governor have signed off on legislation changing the CPC funding allowances to allow for rail banking purchases, which this is a rail banking purchases. So once that occurred, it was my original idea. I reached out to both the select board and to the Greenway committee. And my thought was that since rail banking purchases were not allowed through CPC funding, that we actually reach out to the Community Preservation Committee and ask for for funding for us to complete the purchase or purchase of the right-of-way acquisition, and also for $100,000 to be utilized for the start of design. And by doing that, if the CPC was willing to put this to a town meeting vote and the town meeting approved it, rather than put a debt exclusion on the taxpayers, that's already there, if we would go back and actually rescind that vote at a future town meeting, take that off and use the CPC funds, which come from surcharges and some matching funds from the state that our residents have actually paid taxes towards. So we are currently in, like I say, in the position we received $200,000 grants for a total of $200,000, which require some town matching funds. So I'm here on behalf of the Greenway Committee requesting the consideration of $270,000 from community preservation funds to be used, $170,000 of that to go to the acquisition of the right-of-way, and then another $100,000 for a total of $270,000, and that $100,000 would be used to go towards the start of design. Now, the region, through state and federal funds on the Transportation Improvement Program, has earmarked about just under $6 million for fiscal year 24 for the actual construction of this project. And in general, design costs for something like this usually run around 10 or 12% of what the construction costs are. So I am estimating that the total design costs from start to finish through the different stages will probably be about $600,000.
Okay, are there questions? I'm sure people have questions.
You know, we just went through this whole pickleball thing where we thought the price was X and it turned out to be X plus whatever, 19,000. What are the potentials, Ed, for your, not that you're doing it wrong, but that the figures are going to become a different number going down the road? And the second part of this is I've heard that there might be some abutter opposition, and I didn't know if that might delay the project and, again, result in increased costs. Is there anything we can say about that?
I think there's some abutters that are afraid that they are going to get their property split and not have access to another parcel. That's not the town's intent. In fact, they had the state MDR reach out to me and ask about that, because there are two parcels that would get split by this, and I have assured them that it is not our intention to split parcels and not have anyone not have access to another part. Fortunately, this is a fairly flat section, so you don't have an instance where that I see that the Greenway may be raised at any point and actually become a physical barrier between, shall we say, two different parcels of the same ownership. So, that we will look at that and make sure that does not happen through the design stages of this project. And as far as costs go, who thought COVID came along? So generally, as far as the acquisition cost comes in, we are already locked into that for an agreement. The state uses a cost accelerant in their projections when they're doing their TIP estimates. Could something unforeseen happen that, asphalt goes way back up? It's possible. Is it highly probable? Probably not. And, it's also possible from the costs that we have now that maybe they come down a little bit too.
Originally, years ago, before the state decided that community preservation funds couldn't be used, and then they did decide. But before that, there was money allocated for beginning some activities and as far as abutters. I don't know what's happened to any of that. I don't know what has also happened. There was money still unused from the money that was originally passed. So those are a couple things that we probably need to be looked into. I don't know how much money was left over, but I know it was sitting there for a while, and I don't know whether it was returned to a line or not right now. I'd have to do a little looking in that. But I also have no idea where all the work went, because I know they were doing some things about that work. So the original committee might have some things to help with.
Virginia, the July 10th, 21 figure that I had was that there was 13,200 and I can't read it here now, 13,000 some odd left in that account for Greenway acquisition. It's nowhere near the amount of money we're talking about.
No. It shouldn't even be that much.
Yeah.
We didn't grant that much money, and they used some of it. I was thinking more a couple hundred.
Oh, no.
At the most. So I don't know what that is, but I don't know where the materials would be, because they had talked to abutters. There had been some legal, checking deeds and things like that, I thought. And I have no idea.
Yeah, KP Law, who we're still using, is familiar with all that. They were part of that.
Yeah. Is that material available?
Well, Mike Bueller just turned all the materials over to me, but I really don't see where that's pertinent to any of this.
No.
As a rail banking agreement,
Okay.
The corridor goes as one piece versus actually an outright purchase.
Yeah, but it was also, I know it was piecemeal. This person, they were checking this person's property or that person's to see exactly where things were. I don't know, because I decided until there was a firm offer and everything, I wasn't going to keep worrying about it or looking into it.
Right.
Looks like we're on our way.
Ed, can I ask you a couple questions about the funding? So basically, this request is to match what was approved at town meeting for the debt exclusion. So the 270,000 is really to erase the debt exclusion, and that 170,000 of it, is that enough to do the match? Or is it you including the $100,000 of the initial design, that the 270 would be enough to do the match of the two $100,000 grants?
The 170,000 would be sufficient to do the match portion and have enough to actually acquire the right of way.
Okay.
And then the thought process being that we are going to need to start the design along the way, and this would at least start the design and probably get it to the first point of the 10% level.
So Ed, would you guess that at some point, if you're talking about another $600,000 for design over and above this, is it your estimation that at some point we're going to be looking at debt exclusion anyway?
It would be another $500,000 over this. So I'm not sure at that point in time if we're looking at a debt exclusion, if we're looking, for some other CPC funds and doing possibly a borrowing through just a regular town meeting vote rather than a debt exclusion.
Oh, okay.
Is the $6 million that we're slated to get in 2022, is that, first of all, is that still going to happen? And is any of that money towards design?
No, that's strictly construction.
And is that a definite?
It is still currently on the tip.
Okay, that's what I thought. So we're still going to have to come up with an additional probably $500,000 anyway towards the design, if only $100,000 of this request is going towards design, right?
Correct.
Okay. And can I, one more question? This is like, at what point did it go from, we can't purchase it, it's only a like 99-year lease versus a purchase outright?
It was always a lease.
Okay, so it's still a lease.
But that was why they took it off of community preservation, because it was a lease.
Yeah.
Because of,
and technically it's not a lease.
It's a purchase?
It's however you want to call it, acquisition. The railroad does retain the right to take it back. However, once it's built on, and they're already agreeing to give it up, what is the probability that they will actually come back and say, by the way, we really want to re-energize that part of the corridor and reuse it, especially if you look at how much it costs per foot or per mile to lay down railroad tracks nowadays.
Mm-hmm. And this would be under open space or undesignated, correct?
Recreation, yeah, yeah, open space recreation or undesignated.
And right now we have already borrowed against future earnings, right? Do we have a figure currently on that?
Pomeroy Meadow Road, it's approximately $56,000 a year for 10 years.
Right.
And we're into it. I mean,
Yes.
we made some payments already.
Yeah.
But that's the only one we have.
Yeah.
So far.
Yeah. Well, some cities and towns have quite a few going.
Ed, can you just
Yes,
repeat
they do.
the-
You're correct.
Can you tell me how much is it for 10 years? It's how much?
It's $55,000 to $56,000 over that per year over the 10-year period.
$56,341.
I think that I think it changes a little bit, doesn't it?
I'd have to go back and look at the terms of it, of whether it was a level payment bond or note, or whether it's a bond or note that has a set principal amount with a declining interest on it.
I think
So
that
it's possible it may decline over the years.
over a little bit, but not a lot. But I think it was the second one you mentioned.
So Ed, with other requests on the table, this already being approved as a debt exclusion, what would that mean in terms of, like, was it 10 years? Like how many years is this, would this debt be on the tax rolls?
What debt?
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, how much would be pay? How long would we be paying this to get the $270,000?
We wouldn't be. We'd be just
You would,
taking it out of
right.
designated.
No, I'm
Yeah,
saying.
I'm not,
Oh, if we
it
didn't
was not
do anything,
If it was not approved and they went with Plan A, which was the debt exclusion,
okay.
I'm just wondering how much would taxpayers be generally paying for how long?
my memory was, and I'd have to go back and look and make sure, I think it was about 10 or 12 cents per $1,000 of valuation. And then it just depends on, how long a note or a bond was taken out. It's an acquisition of properties. So, could be, anywhere from 10 to 25 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And my preference would be to pay it off in the shorter amount of time, obviously, than to take it out to the 25-year limit.
Are there other questions? Are we ready to make any decisions?
Well, wasn't there another, Cindy? I mean, I'm just wondering in terms of like the numbers of projects, I think there was also another one that was raised, right?
No dollar amount to that one.
Okay,
It's
so
preliminary.
what I am remembering is the number one priority in terms of the update of the master plan was the acquisition of the Greenway. And I think we really need to keep that in our minds, the acquisition and the building of the Greenway. It's just been too long. Yes, there are other things that are, there's two major things that we might request CPC money for, but I don't think for this special town meeting. So that's the answer to that. I can give a little background on that in a moment if you wish, but for me, I'd like to make a motion. I'm sorry, I don't have the actual numbers, so correct me if I'm wrong. I'd like to move that CPC support the utilization of funds, and is it 370,000 we want, or 270? 270,000?
270,000.
Okay, 270,000 towards the acquisition of the Greenway, which will provide the match to the grants we've already been awarded, and will support this next important phase of having the Greenway in Southampton.
Do we have a second?
And don't forget,
That should say acquisition
don't
and
forget, it's
design.
got $100,000 for design in it,
Yeah.
too.
Okay,
Acquisition and design.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion?
Wait a minute, are we changing the dollar amount?
No,
270, okay, all right,
270,000,
thank you.
270,300.
Okay,
Can I just ask a procedural question? Since the town already approved a debt exclusion, would this be presented to the town in lieu of, or to cancel out the debt exclusion? That would have to be contingent upon that, or how?
We probably should have that. Ed?
You can do that, and then if it passes at like the annual town meeting, we can put the official rescission of the debt exclusion on the town meeting vote, town meeting warrant.
So we can have this one first. If it passes, then we can look at the rescission.
Rescind the other one.
Okay.
Correct.
Any other questions or comments? Are we ready for a vote? So who would like to start? Give me your name and how you
Palmer,
vote.
yes.
Krasinski, aye.
Simmons, aye.
Groden,
Joseph, aye.
Brown eye.
Ahart, aye. Are there any abstentions? Any negative votes?
Maybe Randall stepped away from his phone. He's on this committee, isn't he?
Yes, but I don't think well, he was driving back.
Hi, Kemp, abstain.
Oh, okay. There you are. Well, it has passed, and we need to get the motion for the warrant, the article for the warrant. So I've got some writing to do for two things. Is there anything else that needs to come before us?
Can I just preliminarily mention two open space projects?
Yes, please.
One, the Open Space Committee at the most recent meeting moved to put an official proposal for an acquisition of a property which abuts what's formerly called Durrell's Path going up Pomeroy Mountain. It's 40 acres, it's landlocked. And we have spoken to the landowners, and so far we haven't gotten an answer. So the specific action is to make a formal proposal. It will all be contingent on utilizing CPC money and having the town vote in favor of it. I don't have an actual number. I don't have any more details. So it's really not do any more than just tell you about that at this point in time. I'll have to come back in a future meeting and give more specifics, but you suggested, Virginia, that I at least bring it up.
Yes.
The second is this, the Kestrel Land Trust was approached by landowners in Southampton who own property along the northern edge of the Manhan River, but it's in Southampton. And they just went directly to Kestrel Land Trust, and it's going to be a combination of a purchase and a donation. And there will be a match required from our town of perhaps 10% of the actual purchase price or less. Again, we do not have numbers. And so I didn't put any kind of application forward to this committee on that one because I don't have any specifics about it. But it's pretty important property because it's right there along the river on the Easthampton line. So those are two things that will have to come forward at a future meeting. So I'll give more details at that time. Once again, I don't think either of those are going to be a tremendously large amount of money. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anything else that needs to come before us? Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you all very much. I do appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Ed.
Okay.
Stay well, you guys.
We've
Yeah.
adjourned. The meeting is adjourned.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye, you guys. Thank you.